minutes past the hour. After only winning his home state of Georgia on Super Tuesday, Newt Gingrich is putting all his chips on the Deep South in the next week. He's decided to ditch Kansas for Alabama and Mississippi, and that decision, not only to stay in the race, but to double down, may be a huge factor for everyone. So let's talk about this. Joining us now, former spokesman, House Republican Conference, Gretchen Hamel, Democratic strategist Tim Punke, and national political reporter for Politico, Alexander Burns. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Alexander, you. Gingrich the Kingmaker is what he's being called. Tony Perkins, president of Conservative Family Research Council, sent out an email last night. I'm going to read it here. Gingrich has never been in a more influential position in deciding the outcome of the nomination. He could be a kingmaker if he stepped out of the race and threw his support to another candidate. Remember Eric Erickson, another prominent conservative, said the same thing about Rick Perry? The very next day, Rick Perry dropped out of the race. Do you think Gingrich will take his advice?
You know, Zoraida, if Gingrich were to go in the Tony Perkins Kingmaker direction, it would be sort of contrary to all the personal qualities that he's exhibited in this campaign. That victory speech, as he called it in Georgia on Tuesday, was just this very, very self-indulgent affair, sort of heaping praise on himself for winning his home state. But, you know, going forward, Gingrich clearly has some personal political decisions to make. The longer he goes on in this race, the more he's just staking his, not just his political future, but his entire professional reputation on maybe being the Southern regional candidate against Mitt Romney. It's not clear that that's going to be a good trade-off for Newt Gingrich, and maybe he could win some more points with his party, more points with conservatives if he sort of takes one for the team.
And a divided party continues, so you think he'll stay in?
I think that right now Newt Gingrich is full speed ahead. I think if he loses in those two Southern primaries next week, it's going to be a much, much tougher road to hoe.
All right, Gretchen, next up is Kansas, where recent legislation on abortion brings up the issues raised in the contraception battle, right? Charles P. Pierce, columnist for Esquire magazine, says this about the battle. Mitt Romney, once again, is going to have a golden chance to reverse the pro-choice position that helped him get elected governor of Massachusetts, thereby cementing his reputation as an unprincipled opportunist that nobody on either side of the question trusts. Thus will be presented with the question of which yawns more ominously for the Republicans, their gender gap with women or their putative frontrunners' credibility gap with everyone. You're a conservative woman. We know you are also a baseball fan. Why? Because we checked one of your pages. You had a countdown clock on your website to when pitchers and catchers were actually showing up for spring training. So I'm going to put a little baseball analogy here. Two things heat up in October, the playoffs and the presidential race. Can Romney hit the clutch for the conservatives?
Yes, I think he can, and I think, you know, looking at Kansas, looking at some of these states where the, birth control has come up, you have to look at where Romney has played well. It made the difference in Ohio. He won the women's vote in Ohio, and it made the difference. Had Santorum not gotten off a winning message about religious freedom with this birth control mandate and actually talked about it instead of talking about birth control and women's rights, then he could have won Ohio. But Romney is talking about what the majority of Americans care about right now, and that is the economy, it's government spending, and how we get this nation back on track. We are tired of debating the old debates, and I think November will be about what this nation wants and what the majority of the people want, and that's a good economy.
All right, Tim, I'm going to switch gears here on you. An op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, political expert Larry Sabato, he says he crunches some numbers and says whether he's injured or strong, by June, Romney is going to be the Republican candidate for president. But one thing that he is missing is money, right? We know that he is personally rich, and a lot of people, big donors, have given him money, but he can't really identify with that small donor. He's lagging behind in those. The New York Times quoted a voter as saying he is so rich, he does not need my support. So someone who is really good at reaching out to that small donor is your candidate, Barack Obama. So I've got a little show and tell here today. Not only does he have contests that you can enter for a small donation, but he also has tons of fun merchandise, right? iPhone covers, canned koozies, dog sweaters, a mug with a long-form ticket that says Made in America. Even Santorum is getting the hint. He's selling sweater vests. Do you have any advice for Romney, what he can do perhaps to get those small donors to give him some money?
The canned koozie is my favorite. I think
around here it is as well, by the way.
I think one thing Romney can do simply is to simply try to connect with the American middle class. Romney's had so many gaffes recently, from the $10,000 bet to the friends with NASCAR owners, to simply completely being off message. I mean, Romney's biggest problem, I think, over the last month is simply that they've gotten off track in terms of talking about the economy, instead of talking about things like immigration or talking about these women's issues and the Rush Limbaugh controversy. That's really gotten the Republicans incredibly off track. And you're seeing that more and more in the favorability ratings. I know one of the things we've been talking about is this idea that, well, the long campaign is having an impact on everybody. But Romney's favorability ratings right now are 28%. 28%. That's a terrible place to be right now, and that's going to affect his fundraising really across the board.
All right, Alexander, Gretchen, and Tim, thanks for joining us this morning.